Hi, I'm Diana Hoelscher with Influence for Good podcast. I hope you'll join me so that together we can be an influence for good. A few years ago, I was going through a really hard time in my life, and one of my dear friends, Rachel Ford, just showed up for me in a way I never would have guessed. When she knew I was just going through this difficult time, we live in different states. She lives in Colorado. I live in Houston, Texas. And um, she called, she talked to me, she prayed for me, she prayed with me. She sent me sweet, loving messages, like to help me. But one day, a package arrived, and it was a Minky Couture blanket. It's a Minky Couture blanket called The Hug. Now, I don't know if you have ever tried one of these. This, I had never. I had heard of this as like this bougie, fancy blanket that I don't know was maybe a little bit, in my mind, I thought maybe a little bit out my price range, and maybe because I'm at this stage in my life where I don't know, I tend to, when I have extra money, put it towards other things. Like I spend money on kids and things like that because that's just the mama heart. But this friend sent me this incredibly luxurious blanket, and it was such a perfect gift. I've such now started calling it my grief gift. I was going through this absolute moment of grief, and this blanket was so luxurious and so comforting. And so now it's become this thing that whenever I have a friend whose their dad dies or they've been through some really sad or hard or traumatic heartbreak, it's this thing that I send because this incredible gift was given to me. I definitely want to pay it forward. That influence for good of showing up in a way to make me feel loved was so tender. And I'm just not used to maybe being spoiled like that. And I went, whoa. So this became this really fun concept. And I'm wondering if you want to think about this with me. When you know that somebody is going through a hard thing, how do you approach them? We all have things that kind of stick in our mind of like epic fail moments. I had an epic fail moment. A friend of mine named Sharon Bigler, when I was probably 25 years old, her her father passed away, and I didn't know what to say. We were serving in the same church, congregation and we were serving over little children, and the other ladies that were closer to her age, she was older than me, seemed to know how to put their arms around her and comfort her as she was going through her grief, and I remember I just didn't know what to say, and I just didn't know what to do. And I kept thinking, "What should I say?" And the harder I thought about it, the worse it got, and the more tongue-tied I felt, and I did the worst thing you can do. I said nothing. I said nothing, and I did nothing. I just tried to be really happy and upbeat, almost like I'm a distraction, like, "Oh, let's just think about happy thoughts." And I did not meet her in her moment. I didn't. And I have regretted it for 25 years. I mean, if she hears this commentary, she is gonna be like, "What?" She will have no idea that this has been something that I have carried as, like, a personal heartbreak fail in my life, that I had a friend that I cared about, and I didn't know how to show up for her. So, then now I flash forward and I tell you about my friend Rachel, who does, for me, the epic win. I recently went through another kind of tricky moment, and I really reached out to some of my loved ones saying, I need some support. I need some love. And they actually handled it the same way I did 25 years ago. They said nothing. They were like, sorry, I'll pray for you. And it all felt very dismissive. And I'm sure they were probably just in the same spot I was 25 years ago of, I don't know what to say or what to do. So I hope that this little message today will be a cautionary tale. I want you to think through this a little bit so that you end up like my friend Rachel, who just showed up and was this person who met me in this moment of crisis and heartbreak with just one of the most perfect moments. instead of being like I was 25 years ago with my friend Sharon, where I just failed her. I want you to sit and think through for a minute what your very own love language would be. What would be something that if somebody showed up for you and loved on you that way would make a huge impact? And think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the lady that shows up with flowers. When I know that person is having a hard day, I'm going to show up with flowers. And maybe it's not just a hard day. I have another dear friend, Wendy. Hers is different, but like I don't know that I could even say this isn't maybe the best one also. She will literally show up and just sit with you. She doesn't know what to say a lot of the time. She'll just ask how you're feeling and just let you talk. But she literally shows up and sits with you. And then this other wonderful friend of mine, oh my gosh, her name is Truly Harker. And she is the most incredible listener. She has such a great attitude about this. I hope you'll meet her one day on one of these interviews. She has really poor health. And in her poor health, she feels like one of the great ways that God has given her to minister to other people is to be a great listener. She's like, she says to me when I'm going through a hard time in my life, she goes, "Hey, call me. Call me anytime." She goes, "I'm going to be here because I don't feel well enough today to be up and about." She goes, "So I'm here. I am here to listen." And wow, wow, those are powerful words to be willing to show up and that she has found a way to see the good in her not having a super healthy immune system. Instead, she now has learned from God putting it on her heart that this was a gift that God gave her because he gave her the spiritual gift of being a great listener and he gave her a physical body that wasn't super healthy. That those two things together were a dream team for her being able to be somebody who could help people through hard moments. So, what's something for you? Is it the written word? Is it flowers? Is it a baked good? Oh, I have another friend, Sophie. She shows up for me by bringing dinner. I didn't ask her to. She doesn't know I'm going through something. She just thinks I'm a really busy person. And so she will just walk up and say, "Here's dinner. Either use it tonight or use it tomorrow." I'm like, "Why? Why? What made you even think to do that for me?" And she was like, she goes, I see you. You're so busy. You're one of the busiest people I know." And I was like, "Oh, I hate that. I don't want to be one of the busiest people somebody knows because I'm worried, what am I missing out on by being too busy? What moments of vulnerability and special conversations and tender experiences am I missing out on by being too busy?" But man, she sees me and just shows up with this meal. I want you to just think about it. What are some things that you want to make your MO of how you're going to show up for people so that you never end up in that same mistake that I was in where I just didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. Let's you and me keep looking for ways to be God's hands. Let's keep looking for ways to be an influence for good. Hey, thanks for listening to Influence for Good podcast. Would you please take a second before you move on with your day and just think about the things that we talked about? Is there anyone in your life, your friends, your family members, your coworkers, that might need to hear this message? Sometimes a lesson that a parent or a boss or a coworker has said a million times can't be heard and can't be received except through a third person party. If there was something in today's message that you feel like could help a friend, will you please take a minute to just share it with them so that together we can be an influence for good?